Welcome to another episode of Shadows of the Tarot. Sam had no idea that Elisa's life had become inexplicably interwoven with his own, a connection he never would have suspected. He had never taken an interest in the tarot before, dismissing it as mere superstition, yet now, the card piper had given him rested in his pocket like a silent enigma, compelling him to acknowledge its presence. The intricate illustration on its surface intrigued him, stirring a curiosity he couldn't quite explain. Perhaps it was nothing, just a meaningless piece of paper. But then again, could it hold some hidden insight into the uncertainties weighing on his mind? Lately, doubt had crept into his thoughts, particularly about the police. Were they on to him? Did they have evidence, something tangible, that could tie him to his crimes? The thought unsettled him, gnawing at the edges of his nerves. His unease only grew when a work colleague mentioned that the police had come looking for him at his workplace. The news sent a cold ripple through his chest. Trying to mask his apprehension, he had casually asked if the officers had given any indication of why they wanted to speak with him. But the response had done little to ease his fears. They had only left a vague message. If his workplace heard from him, they were to let him know that the police wished to speak with him. No explanations. No specifics. Just an open-ended request that made his pulse quicken with paranoia. Avoiding home seemed like the only option. He couldn't risk going back, not when he had no idea what awaited him. If the police were watching, staking out his place, it would be a foolish mistake to walk straight into their hands. Instead, he checked into a small, inconspicuous motel on the outskirts of town, paying in cash, money he had gotten from Piper. The unfamiliar room, with its dim lighting and the faint scent of mildew clinging to the air, felt impersonal, but for now, it was the safest place he could think of. As he sat on the edge of the creaky bed, the tarot card still nestled in his pocket, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far worse. Sam had no desire to have a tarot reading in person. The idea of sitting across from someone, exposing himself to their scrutiny, made him uneasy. Yet, as he sat alone in his dimly lit motel room, the glow of his computer screen casting shifting shadows on the walls, curiosity got the better of him. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before he gave in and searched for Elisa's website. It was a simple yet strangely compelling page, adorned with cryptic symbols and a gallery of worn antique cards. Something about it felt ominous, as if the answers he sought were already waiting for him, hidden in the card's faded illustrations. Without fully understanding why, he reached out to her for a reading. The response was swift. Elisa's message was concise, yet its weight pressed against his chest like an unseen force: fight or flight. Those 3 words struck a nerve. It was as if she had peered directly into the turmoil of his mind, articulating the exact dilemma he was facing. As she shuffled her deck, she instructed Sam to focus, to center his thoughts while she drew the final card. He obeyed, his pulse quickening as he anticipated the outcome. Then, the card was revealed: Judgment. Elisa's explanation resonated with an eerie significance. This was a moment of awakening, a time when the past would inevitably give way to a new chapter. Whether that change would be for better or worse depended on the decisions he made now. It was a card of reckoning, a symbol of resurrection, yet also one of finality. She warned him that judgment often signaled the conclusion of something significant in one's life, paving the way for transformation, but not without consequences. In some cases, it could indicate total loss, particularly in the face of legal repercussions. "You have to stay composed as the drama plays out," she cautioned. Her words lingered in his mind long after the screen had gone dark, intertwining with a gnawing fear already twisting inside him. The message was clear. Sam didn't need Elise to spell it out for him. He knew exactly what judgment meant in his case. He had to run. Staying put was no longer an option. The walls were closing in, and it was only a matter of time before the authorities caught up with him. Fleeing the country was his only chance at survival. The problem was, he had no idea how to go about it. Obtaining a fake passport wasn't exactly something he could Google, but he knew that in the right places, with the right whispers, anything was possible. The pub had always been a hub of unspoken deals and backroom exchanges, a place where people who knew people. Word traveled fast, and if you asked the right questions without raising suspicion, you could get answers. Sam started discreetly, mentioning his need to disappear for a while, to a few well-connected patrons. It wasn't long before a chain of whispers began, passing from one person to the next until finally, a lead surfaced. A nameless contact relayed a message. Someone was willing to help, but it wouldn't be cheap. He was instructed to meet them at a small country hotel, the kind of place where travelers came and went without a second glance. That was fine. Sam was comfortable in the country. Long stretches of empty roads and anonymous motels were his kind of territory. He could handle it. But as he made plans to leave, another thought nagged at him: his riverside property. He had invested too much into it to simply abandon it. He couldn't take it with him, but leaving it sitting there unattended felt like leaving a loose end. That wasn't an option. If he rented it out, at least he'd have a stream of income while he figured out his next steps. It was a temporary solution, but for now, that was all he needed. For now. As Sam sat alone, the weight of his reality pressed down on him with suffocating intensity. Fleeing was the only option. He had accepted that, but the thought of leaving his collection behind made his stomach twist. There was no way he could take it with him, not when he needed to disappear without a trace. He would be gone for a long time, maybe forever, if he was lucky enough to escape at all. But how could he say goodbye to the pieces he had so carefully gathered over the years? Each item held significance, a story, a memory. They were a part of him. Fury bubbled inside him, directed squarely at himself. How had he let it come to this? After all these years, after all his careful planning, he had made mistakes, stupid, reckless mistakes. And now, everything was falling apart. He clenched his fists, his mind racing as he tried to reassure himself that this wasn't the end. He could always start fresh. A new country, a new life, a new collection. That was what the Judgment card had said, wasn't it? A new beginning. But what about her? His mother's foot. The thought of leaving it behind sent a wave of anguish through him. That foot had been with him for years, his most cherished possession, his greatest source of comfort. He couldn't just abandon it like some discarded relic. Panic set in as he frantically searched for solutions. Could he take it with him? He scoured the internet, looking into the export of frozen goods, but the answer became painfully clear. There was no way it would get through customs. No matter how much he tried to twist the reality of his situation, the truth remained: he would have to leave it behind. A cold dread settled over him as he reached for his phone, only to notice several missed calls blinking on the screen. His breath caught in his throat. He quickly tracked the number, and his blood ran cold. It was the police department. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in as his mind raced through the implications. If they were calling him, it meant they were closing in. And then the final blow landed like a sledgehammer to his chest. The police had obtained enough circumstantial evidence to secure a search warrant for his apartment. Sam could picture it now, Detective Nathan, his scrutinizing gaze sweeping over every inch of his carefully curated space. He had always prided himself on covering his tracks, but it wouldn't take long for Nathan's sharp eyes to notice the small details. The bookcase on wheels. The hidden freezer behind the false wall. Sam's breath came in short, shallow gasps. They were going to find everything. His time had run out. They had seized the contents of the freezer, evidence grotesque enough to confirm their worst suspicions, but still, there were no bodies. Without them, the case remained incomplete, the full extent of Sam's crimes just out of reach. Nathan wasn't about to let that stand. He had seen killers slip through the cracks before, and he wasn't about to let it happen again. Determined to uncover the truth, he had his team conduct a full investigation into all of Sam's assets. It didn't take long before they uncovered his riverfront property. A secluded stretch of land, away from prying eyes. It was the perfect place to hide something. Nathan's gut told him this was it. The bodies had to be there. A search team was dispatched, combing through every inch of the property with trained precision. They scoured the house, the shed, the surrounding land. Nothing. Not a single trace. Frustration gnawed at Nathan as the hours dragged on. Then, as he stood by the water's edge, something caught his attention. The rowboat, tethered loosely near the house, swaying gently with the river's current. Nathan's pulse quickened. If Sam had wanted to dispose of bodies without a trace, where better than the river? The steady flow of water, the silt and debris, nature itself would work to erase the evidence. Without hesitation, Nathan called in a specialized diving team and a dredger. The search expanded into the water, the divers disappearing beneath the murky surface while machinery churned up the riverbed, clawing at the depths. It was slow, grueling work. The water was dark, thick with sediment, reducing visibility to near nothing. They hauled up discarded junk, a rusted bicycle, scraps of metal, even the bloated corpse of a dog. But no human remains. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, fatigue weighed heavily on the team. Hours had passed, and they were ready to call it a day. But then, a commotion. The dredger pulled up something tangled, something heavy. A net. Waterlogged and twisted. The divers hauled it onto the riverbank, their faces grim as they cut through the mesh. Nathan didn't need to see inside to know. The stench hit him first. Then came the unmistakable sight of decayed human remains entangled within the netting. Limbs, fragments of flesh, torn, water-worn, but undeniably human. Nathan swallowed hard, his stomach lurching. Relief and revulsion warred within him. He had found them. Or at least, some of them. The nightmare was real. The foot fetish killer was no urban legend, no faceless monster lurking in the shadows. He was real. He had a name. And now, they were going to find him. Justice was coming. Sam knew time was running out. Every instinct screamed at him to move now. The decision to abandon his collection had been ripped from his hands, but the thought of leaving it behind, scattered and exposed to prying eyes, made his stomach churn. Years of careful curation, stolen moments of ecstasy, all gone. But there was still one thing he could not leave behind. His mother's foot. He had to go back for it. The risk was immense. He knew the police would be watching his house, lying in wait for him to return, but he had no choice. Under the cover of darkness, he slipped through the city's back streets, moving like a shadow toward the place that had once been his sanctuary. His pulse pounded in his ears as he neared the house. He stayed low, watching, waiting, scanning for any sign of movement. No flashing lights, no unmarked cars, no figures lurking in the dark. Now or never. He crept inside, every step calculated, every breath shallow. But the moment he entered, dread wrapped around him like a noose. His collection was gone. He stood frozen in the empty space where his trophies had once been, his chest tightening with a pain more intense than he had ever imagined. His life's work, violated, stolen. He clenched his fists, nails biting into his palms as fury boiled inside him. But he had no time to grieve. The foot. He still had the foot. Swallowing the lump in his throat, Sam moved to the kitchen, his fingers working quickly to pry up the false tiles. His breath hitched as he reached inside and felt the familiar shape beneath his fingertips. Relief flooded him. They hadn't found it. She was safe. He took the red box containing the foot carefully, cradling it like something sacred, before grabbing a bag of clothes and slipping back into the night. He had done what he came for. Now, it was time to disappear. By now, he looked nothing like the man in the police descriptions. He had changed his hair, altered his features just enough to make recognition difficult. His passport was ready, the flight booked, and as long as he kept his head down, he'd be gone before anyone even realized he had been here. He had thought of everything. Cash would keep him untraceable, and he had plenty. It was stashed in his carry-on, expertly concealed in ways that would bypass even the most thorough inspections. The right tools could be bought, if you had the money. And Sam always made sure he had money. Now, all he had to do was get to the airport. before the police got any closer. Sam placed his mother's foot gently on the passenger seat as he started the engine, his fingers lingering on it for a moment. He wanted to savor these final moments together. The thought of leaving her behind was unbearable, like cutting out a piece of his own soul. The road stretched before him, an endless blur of headlights and asphalt, but he barely noticed. Tears streamed down his face as he drove, his vision swimming with grief. He sobbed gut-wrenching, uncontrollable sobs that racked his entire body. His chest ached, his throat burned, but he couldn't stop. He cradled the foot in his lap at every red light, whispering apologies, promises, love. By the time he pulled into the airport parking lot, he was an absolute mess. His eyes were red and swollen, his breathing uneven, his hands trembling as he turned off the ignition. He clutched the foot one last time, pressing it close to his chest, taking in every detail, the shape, the texture, the weight of it. Then, with a shuddering breath, he forced himself to let go. There was no way to take her with him. His fingers lingered over the cloth-wrapped bundle for what felt like an eternity before he finally set it down on the seat beside him. His heart felt like it was being ripped from his chest, but he had no choice. If he hesitated too long, it would all be over. He inhaled sharply, wiped his face with the back of his sleeve, and willed himself to move. Inside the airport, Sam moved with purpose, though his legs felt like lead. The bright, sterile lighting made him feel exposed, vulnerable. He kept his head down, navigating the terminal until he spotted the men's restroom. He pushed through the door, gripping the edge of the sink as he stared at his reflection. He barely recognized himself, his newly dyed hair, the clean shave, the fresh clothes. He had done everything right. He was unrecognizable. So why did he still feel like everyone could see him? His hands shook as he turned on the faucet, splashing cold water onto his face. The shock of it grounded him, just a little. He pressed his palms to the sink, breathing in and out, trying to steady himself. A part of him almost reconsidered. I could stay. I could find a way to fix this. But no. There was no fixing it. His collection was gone, the police were closing in, and if he didn't leave now, he never would. Sam exhaled slowly, grabbed a few paper towels, and patted his face dry. With one last glance in the mirror, he straightened his shoulders and forced himself to step back into the terminal. His flight was waiting. Meanwhile, Nathan and his team were watching everywhere. They had orders to monitor all airports, train stations, and border crossings. But Sam had done his work well. His transformation was complete. No one was looking for the man he had become. And if luck was on his side, by the time they realized their mistake, he would be long gone. Remember to like, subscribe, and share to others, so you don't miss an episode.